Welcome to Breathe. My name is Jim. I will be your guide today for Daoist Yoga. We're going to go through a variety of different exercises. Again, the focus, just as it was last week, is going to be on self-care. And during these trying times, self-care is actually fairly important. Again, we're going to focus on, when it comes to moving energy, we're going to focus on loving kindness. Oftentimes we think about moving different colors, different things, but in these trying times, I think loving kindness actually is very appropriate when it comes to actually moving energy and moving chi. So we'll start out simply, is we're going to settle into our structure. And so what does that mean? It means your feet are about hip width apart at a comfortable distance, and you're settling your weight into your heels. You're gently bending your knees. You have a gentle tuck of your tailbone. And we'll just start out first with just our hands, just gently curling our fingers in and then releasing. And sometimes it helps to close your eyes and just kind of feel this movement and process. Oftentimes we take this movement for granted. Our hands just open and close unless something is wrong. And what I want you to do is slow the movement down so you first feel the first knuckle, the second, the third, and then the final knuckles curling in and then releasing. And once you're comfortable with the physical movement, now integrate the breath. And so we're we're inhaling as we reach out and exhaling as we curl our fingers back in. Nice slow, gentle movement. And as you slow it down, you'll start to feel more of the muscles that are actually engaged in simply just curling or simply opening and closing your hand. Go once more. Now we'll move up to our wrists. And so, again, it's just nice physical movement. The wrist is leading, fingers are following. There's a bit of a stretch in both directions. And so you'll feel now a little bit different tension build up and release within the muscles of your forearms. We integrate the breath, inhaling and exhaling. If you want to integrate a little bit more movement, is that we're pushing up through our heels, through our knees, hips, spine, shoulders, elbows, wrists, and then reversing that order. So we're creating a little bit of a ripple. Or if you've been to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, think about how a piece of kelp moves in the ocean. And a nice slow, gentle movement. Imagine that with each breath in, you're creating space within the wrist. And as you exhale, you're letting go of any tension that you might feel there. Whether it's physical or emotional, whatever it is, if it doesn't serve you, just let it go with your breath. Again, nice, slow, gentle movement. The slower you go, the easier it is to feel into your wrist and let go of any tension that you may feel there. And we'll go once more up and down. Now we're going to turn the palms to face one another and continue the up and down movement. This time now we're focused on the sides of our wrists. Inhaling and exhaling. And we're focused on breathing into the wrist, creating space. Exhaling, letting go of tension or anything else that doesn't serve us. Just let it go with the breath. Taking the time to feel into the wrist, feel the changes. Feel what muscles are engaged in this simple movement. Allow the breath to dictate the pace. And so with exercises like this, with the joint exercises, is that we're really focused on going nice and slow and actually taking the time to actually feel the movement. One of the benefits of simple movements like this is it allows us to re-engage our neurological system and start to reconnect not only physically but neurologically with our hands and fingers and the other parts of our body as we go through this. Go once more up and down. And now we'll just turn our palms back to facing the ground. We're opening the sides of our wrists, but you'll notice a subtle change in this movement on how we engage our shoulders and elbows Again, the focus is still the wrists. Inhaling and exhaling. And go once more out and back. And now we'll move into the box. So this is a combination of the moves we've just done. Nice slow pattern. We integrate the breath, inhaling and exhaling. And when you're ready, we can begin rounding the corners so it becomes a little bit more of an oval shape. Inhaling and exhaling. So physiologically, one of the benefits to these joint exercises is that the human body is designed for movement. We were not designed to sit in a chair or behind the wheel in our car for hours on end. Our body actually is dependent on movement in order to make sure that we fully nourish our body as well as fully process and remove anything that doesn't serve us. And so there are areas and joints. Let's go once more in this direction. And now we'll reverse direction, beginning with the box. Again, nice, slow, gentle movement. Let the breath set the pace. And when you're ready, you can begin rounding the corners. And so as saying is that there are some joints that don't get a lot of blood supply, and they are very dependent on movement in order for nutrients to be drawn into the joint, as well as to remove any kind of waste products. And so simple exercises like this can have huge benefits to the health, stability, and the long-term life of the joint. Again, focus the breath within the wrist itself, creating space, exhaling and releasing any tension you might feel. And we'll go once more in this direction. Now we're going to move up to our elbows. And so we begin by bringing our fingers in, our wrists, elbows. And what we do is we bring our hands back and through, so we're creating a twist. We begin to unwind from the shoulders, then the elbows, and then reaching out through our fingertips. And so we're inhaling and slowly exhaling. And so this movement actually begins to get into silk reeling and silk pulling, which we'll talk a little bit more about in future classes, but it allows us not only to access the elbow, but also to do a little bit of tendon stretching and releasing. So it's the twist that actually allows for a deeper release within the elbow and the muscles, not only within our forearm, but also in our upper arm as well too. And we'll go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. And so we begin physical movement, bringing our wrists together. And as we extend our arms out, as we're extending first through the pinky side, then the ring finger, the middle finger, and then the index finger, and then the thumb. So it's a slow movement. You'll notice as the slower you go is that you'll feel a subtle change within the muscles within your forearm as you push out through each finger. So we're inhaling and exhaling. Again, focus on the elbow, the joint itself, creating space, releasing tension, anxiety, fear, whatever it might be that doesn't serve you. Go ahead, and if it comes up, just let it go with the breath. we'll go once more in this direction. Good. Let's move to our shoulder. You can place your hand either on front of your navel, or behind your back, wherever it's comfortable. And we begin with just a simple movement, lifting, and then essentially turning our shoulder in a circle. Ideally, you want to try to keep your body not necessarily locked into the earth, but you want to really feel into the rotation of your shoulder. So try to avoid doing too much twisting at this point because it gets you out of your shoulder and actually into the rest of your body. We want to focus right now on just the shoulder itself. So of all the joints in our body, the shoulder is the most movable, has the greatest range of motion, but it also is the joint that's most vulnerable to injury as well too. And so taking the time to take care of our shoulders is kind of important. And so now, once you get the physical movement down, we integrate the breath. Inhaling, breathing directly into the shoulder joint. And then imagine as you inhale into the joint that you're creating space. And then with the exhale, releasing tension. One of the benefits of physical movement like this is that within each of our joints, there's a joint capsule or synovial lining, which with movement produces synovial fluid, which is the lubricant that's used within each of our joints in order to keep the bones from rubbing up against one another, and it helps to maintain the health of the joint. So once you get the movement down, you've integrated the breath, take the time now to explore the full range of movement that you have available to you within your shoulder. You may find some areas where it's a little bit tight, and that's okay. Focus your breath on that area. We're looking for the edges, but we're not trying to push past. But you're taking the time to play a little bit, get to know the full range of motion that you have available to you, finding those areas maybe that need a little bit of attention, and giving yourself a chance during this time to really take care of your shoulder, take care of yourself. Nice, slow, gentle movement. Just focusing your attention on the shoulder, allowing the breath to create space and release tension. Let's go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. Again, just a simple physical movement. You'll notice a subtle change as we change directions, the muscles that are engaged, as well as the muscles and the way in which we're engaging our muscles by just simply changing directions. And once you've got the physical movement down, integrate the breath, inhaling and exhaling. So the slower you go, the easier it is to feel into the shoulder joint. It also helps to stimulate the neurological system a little bit more because now you're more focused on what you're doing versus trying to spin your arm like a propeller. And then take the time to explore the full range of motion that you're looking for. Again, we're not trying to push ourselves into pain. We are looking for those edges. But if you start to feel a little bit of pain, go ahead, back off a little bit and just make a note of it. Focus your breath on and intention on those areas where you feel some stiffness or tightness. And then imagine with your breath as you exhale that you're letting go a little bit of that tension or pain that you might feel. In my personal practice, I tend to focus more attention on the shoulders just because of the amount of use that we put into it, as well as tend to be areas where people tend to feel a lot of pain. One of the things that impacts this is the fact that we're all tablets, laptops, and iPhones are great, but they tend to keep us rolled forward and looking down, which has an impact on our posture, and the shoulders are impacted by by posture problems as well too. And so this is a great way to start to begin to reset your shoulder alignment as well as your posture. Let's go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch arms. Get a nice slow, gentle movement. Integrated in breath, inhaling and exhaling. And when you're ready, begin to play and explore. And feeling into your shoulder joint, allowing the inhale to create space and the exhale to release tension or anything that comes up that doesn't serve you. Just let it go with the breath. So in many ways, this class starts to become a moving meditation where we actually really get a chance to really focus on ourselves. And really and get a chance to get reacquainted with ourselves, because oftentimes we take a lot of the movements that we do each day for granted. You know, my legs work, my arms work, you know, and sometimes we lose connection with that. And movements like this allow us to reconnect and identify areas that might need a little bit more attention, as well as to really focus on, you know, maintaining our body and to give ourselves the time to actually take care of ourselves a little bit better. And we'll go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. So in Daoist yoga, as well as Wuji Qigong, oftentimes people will ask, you know, well, how many times do I, you know, how many reps, how many circles, how many times do I move my shoulder in a circle? And the simple answer is usually we break it down into groups of 3, and so 9, 18, 27, 36. But ultimately it just comes down to, as you go into, you actually begin to feel a shift, whether it's a release of tension or the release of any feelings that you may have that you're trying to let go of. As you just go into, you start to feel a release. But it's also okay just to do 9 in one direction and 9 in the other if you're pressed for time. When I first was introduced to these exercises, one of the things that helped when I was still kind of buried in a cubicle for long periods of the day and stuff is I would start to get up and do exercises like this, just not only to break up the monotony, but to get the tension out of my shoulders and out of the back of my neck. And if I learned anything from working in an office environment for years and years, is we all need to take a few more breaks. Get up and move around a little bit and get out of that posture that we take when we're actually sitting in a chair or standing at a desk for long periods of time. And we'll go once more in this direction. Good. Let's go ahead and relax. Take a moment to just kind of pause and feel from your fingertips up to your shoulders. See if you feel a little bit of a difference from where we started. And now we're going to move on to an exercise that involves more the scapula or the shoulder blade. And we move through like a wave-like pattern. And so the idea is we allow our shoulders to roll forward a little bit, and we begin by lifting our shoulders up, squeezing our shoulder blades together, and then we're actively reaching down with our shoulder blades and then allowing the shoulders to come forward again. So it becomes a little bit of a circular motion. Again, the focus is on moving our scapulas. And we take the time now as we inhale and exhale. And for me, this becomes a lot like a wave on the ocean rising to the beach and then settling back into the ocean. Feeling into your shoulders, feeling the movement, exploring the range of motion that you have available to you. With the breath, creating space, and with the exhale, releasing tension. We'll go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. Inhaling and exhaling. And so we're squeezing our shoulder blades together, bringing them up, allowing them to roll forward as we reach down. Bringing the shoulders forward tends to be easy. Reaching down tends to be the tougher part. But really feel the movement within your shoulders, within your shoulder blades, or your scapula. If it starts to create a little bit of, you start to feel a little bit of pain or tension, then go ahead, back off a little bit again. We're looking for the edges, but we're not trying to push past. And we'll go once more in this direction. Good. And we'll pause and feel. Now we're going to move on to our neck. So I usually just place my hands comfortably over my navel, and we begin by taking a deep breath in. And we begin by looking to your right. Breathe back into center. And now look to your left. Inhaling and exhaling. And so as you inhale, imagine again that you're breathing in and creating space between all the cervical vertebrae. So there's 7 cervical vertebrae that we're thinking about within our neck. And so we're trying with the breath to create space. As we exhale and turn from one direction to the other, we're using it as an opportunity to let go of any tension that we might feel. It's a simple movement, but it does yield dividends. As we go through these neck exercises, it's not uncommon for one side to be a little bit tighter than the other, and that's okay. We'll go once more to either side. And breathe back in the center. And now bring your right ear to your right shoulder. Breathe back in the center. And now bring your left ear to your left shoulder. Inhaling and exhaling. And use the breath to create space, let go of tension, let go of anything that doesn't serve you. And if you want to explore this a little bit more, 2 of the variations are that as you bring your ear to your shoulder, you look down, or you look up, and you notice a subtle change in the muscles that you're accessing when you're looking up or looking down. So it's a good way to not only to explore, but to better find the tension that you may have in your neck, and with the breath, just let that tension go. It's also not uncommon to hear a little bit of noise. But with regular work like this, regular exercises, gradually is that the tension will start to dissipate from your neck, and those noises will also begin to dissipate. And we'll go once more to either side. And breathe back into center. Now allow your chin to roll, come down to your chest. Take a breath back into center, rolling up slowly through each vertebrae, and then raise your eyes to the sky. Inhaling and exhaling. Okay, we're looking for the edges. We're not necessarily trying to push past or push ourselves into pain. Allow the breath to set the pace, going nice and slow, taking the time to really feel into the movement. And if you close your mouth and bring your teeth together gently, as you raise your eyes toward the sky, you should feel a nice stretch, or you may feel a nice stretch along the front of your neck and chest. Normally that's a muscle that's called platysma, which we usually don't focus a whole lot of attention on, but it's the most superficial muscle in our neck. Go once more, forward and back. And breathe back into center. Now we'll move on to what's known as neck retraction, which means that take a nice deep breath in. Imagine somebody's taking their nose or their finger and placing it on your nose and pushing your head straight back. So yeah, this is a chance where we get to enable that double chin, which I don't like to think about. And then imagine how they grab your nose and pull your head forward. And so we're inhaling and exhaling. Again, you may not feel a great range of motion here, and that's fine. But if you spend a lot of time working on computers, looking down at electronic devices, this is a good way to take some of the tension out of your neck. We try to keep our shoulders stable and just gently move our head back and forth as if the head was resting on a set of rails. We try to keep from leaning forward and back, leaning our body or our torso forward and backwards to try to increase it. It's hard not to do. This is one of those exercises that if you're looking to get attention, start doing this in the coffee line, and you'll get everybody's attention. Go once more backwards and forwards. And relax. And now we'll begin neck circles. Now start out small and slow, feeling into your neck. Exploring the pain-free range of motion that you have available to you. This is another movement that can sometimes bring up some sounds. When I first started doing these exercises, I thought my head was going to fall off, all the noises it was making. But gradually with time, the tension comes out and the noises diminish. Oftentimes the noises that we hear are simply tendons moving over the joints. And that's just an indication that wherever those noises are coming from, whichever joints, it's just an indication that we have a little bit too much tension in the muscles of our body. And so dynamic movements like this can actually help to release muscle tension, as well as any emotional stress that you may be feeling. And then gradually, as you get comfortable with the movement, expand the circle slowly, feeling and breathing into the neck. Getting to know the range of motion that you have readily available to you a little bit better. And just know that with a movement like this, that we are stimulating our nervous system, reconnecting a little bit more completely with the movement that's available to us. And we'll go once more in this direction. And now let's switch directions. Starting out small and slow. Integrating the breath, inhaling and exhaling. Going nice and slow, allowing the breath not only to create space, but allowing the exhale to release. Nice, slow, gentle movement. Now with these movements, know that you're giving yourself the opportunity to take better care of yourself. With the movements, we're nourishing the joints, providing them with the nutrients they need in order to stay healthy, and also giving ourselves a chance to release anything that doesn't serve us. And we'll go once more in this direction. Good, and pause. Pause and feel. We're going to move down to our rib cage now. And so I place my hands on my hips just to keep my hips stable and rooted to the earth. And we begin by just a simple rotating movement of our rib cage. So it's hard to keep the hips out completely, but the idea is that we want to focus on moving our rib cage, which now allows us to start stimulating both the thoracic and the lumbar spine. And so with this movement, even though the focus is on moving our rib cage, which makes it a little bit easier for us to visualize, we're actually focusing on mobilizing our spine. And so with each breath in, imagine now you're breathing into your spine. Breathing into the lumbar, the lower back, the thoracic or the mid-spine. And with each breath in, again, we're creating space. And with the breath and the exhale, releasing any tension, tightness, or anything that comes up that doesn't serve us, we're letting that go with the breath. And this is another movement that can be fun to play with. You'll see a lot of dancers that can do a lot of funny things with their rib cages occasionally and stuff like that. I'm working back up to that range of mobility and stuff. But if you feel limited, that's okay. Again, part of what we're doing is not only are we nourishing the joints, but we're stimulating the nervous system, getting familiar with the fact that we can actually move this part of our body. We also get a chance to experience what it's like to actually move our spine without actually moving our hips. And we'll go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. So if at any point in time you need to take a break, feel free to do so. This is a safe space. You don't feel compelled to try to keep up with me or anybody else. For you to sit down if you need to, whatever it takes. Get a nice slow, gentle movement, feeling into your spine. Maybe taking the time to explore, to play a little bit. And allow yourself to reconnect. Reconnect with your body. And we'll go once more in this direction. Pause and feel. And now we'll move down to our hips. And so even though we're moving both hips at the same time, I want you to focus on one hip at a time. We'll start with your right hip. So just get comfortable with the physical movement. Again, when it comes to range of motion, the hip has the second greatest range of motion, but it's a much more stable, strong joint when compared with our shoulders. So as you begin to get reacquainted with the movement of your hip, your right hip. Go ahead now and integrate the breath, and so imagine that you're breathing directly into the hip joint itself. You're focusing your intention on the movement of that joint, looking for the edges, but not necessarily trying to push past. Allowing the breath to create space, promote the intake or uptake of nutrients into the hip joint itself, allowing the creation of more synovial fluid so it moves more freely with less resistance. And again, allow your breath to set the pace. This is one of the classes where going slow is actually promoted. Going fast, not so much. So my personal practice, I tend to focus a lot of attention both on the shoulders and the hips, just because of the amount of stress and tension that both joints take throughout the day. Just really feel into your right hip. Feel how it moves. Look for those edges. And we'll go once more in this direction. Good. The focus still on the right hip now as we'll go in the opposite direction now. You may notice some subtle changes in your right hip as we change directions. Integrate the breath, inhaling directly into your right hip joint, creating space. And with the breath, allow yourself to release the tension you might feel there. And when you're ready, take the time to start playing, exploring. And see what kind of range of motion you have available to you, without necessarily pushing yourself into pain or discomfort. If you find a particular area that needs a little bit more attention, then bring the breath and your intention to that area to release whatever it is that you feel there that needs to be let go of. And we'll go once more in this direction. Good. We'll switch now to your left hip. So begin a nice slow, gentle circle now. Shift your focus and your attention to your left hip. Integrating the breath when you're ready. Inhaling directly into the joint itself. Using your intention and your focus to promote the uptake of nutrients within the hip joint itself, and for an increase in the production of synovial fluid. Again, let the breath set the pace and try to keep the motion equal throughout the entire circle. Sometimes it's easy to kind of flip through or go faster in one area and slower in another, but try to keep the speed equal and consistent. By doing so, this brings more attention to the joint and to the movement that you're doing, which again stimulates the neurological system and the neurological connections that you have to the hip joint. Nice, slow, easy, gentle movement, looking for the edges, but not necessarily trying to push past. Identifying those areas that need a little bit more work. And also take the time to actually enjoy the movement. Be thankful that, that we have the space today to actually focus on our own health care. And that we all still have the capability of actually moving and choosing to actually walk in here. Sometimes we take it for granted, the movement capacity that we have available to us. And we'll go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. Take the time to play and explore. Feel and breathe into your hip. And just feel good about the fact that you actually have the time today to actually take care of yourself, to focus your attention on just you today. And if you want to take it a step further, imagine that with each breath in is that you're breathing loving kindness into the joints. And just taking a little bit of extra time just to really care for yourself. Allow yourself to be okay. It's not uncommon, especially with the hips, that one hip moves a little bit easier than the other. As much as we'd all like to be perfectly symmetrical, yeah, we're not, but that's okay. Movements like this allow us to actually achieve a little bit more symmetry within our body. And we'll go once more in this direction. Good. And pause and feel. And we're going to move on down to our knees. So bring your feet about maybe a little bit wider than hips width apart. You can turn your toes out a little bit so they're about a 45-degree angle at the most, but where they're both equal. Hands are primarily going to go on our femurs, or just above our knees. And we're going to begin by bringing our knees slowly together, and then we're creating small circles. So there shouldn't be any tension or pain in this movement. May not be a great range of motion. When it comes to the joints, the knee's the largest, but it also has the least range of motion. It's responsible for transferring energy from our feet to our hips and our hips back to our feet. And it's not uncommon for pain in the knee actually be coming from our hip or our feet or both. Primarily the weight's in the heels. Trying to keep our knees from going too far past our toes. What you can imagine doing is that you're sitting down as you're going through the circles. And so as we're bringing our knees in, we're settling back into our heels and then coming back up. Nice, slow, gentle movement. Your thigh muscles may begin to complain, and that's okay. Muscles were meant to complain. But this is a good way to stimulate some of the muscles within your quads. And we'll go once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. So one of the muscles that gets stimulated most with these movements is called VMO. And it's one of the important muscles for actually helping to stabilize and strengthen and support the knee. So this exercise also has many variations. It just comes down to either bringing your feet closer together or spreading them further apart. Just be aware that the farther your feet are apart, the more exciting this exercise gets. We'll go once more in this direction. Good. And pause and feel. Bring your feet back together. We'll move down to the ankles. So there's a couple different ways to do this. I usually recommend that people have a little bit of balance support so you can focus on the movement of the ankle itself and you're not struggling with trying to stay up on your balance. So there's a couple different ways to do this. If we had chairs, that's the easiest way to do it of all. But feel free to use a wall if you need a little bit of balance support, or what you can also do is just stick your 1 foot behind you. You're balanced on your toe, and what you do is you just start making circles with your knee, which actually rotates your ankle. Now again, the focus is on the ankle itself, feeling and breathing into the joint. This is also another joint that tends to be pretty noisy as well too. Again, we don't really give a lot of attention to our ankles unless they're actually bothering us. So this is a good way to begin that process. Now, if your ankle circle feels more like an ankle square or rectangle, that's not uncommon. Again, we usually don't focus too much attention on how our ankle is moving until we do exercises like this, and then we realize, well, yeah, there's a little bit of work that can be done here. And we'll go once more in this direction, and now we'll switch directions. This is also another exercise that's hard to go slow. So we like to whip through it, or for whatever reason, we allow ourselves to kind of do really quick circles, but take the time to really feel into it. Also in this position, this is also a good way to actually stretch the toes as well too. And we'll go once more in this direction. Go ahead and shake it out. And now we'll shift to the other side. Again, nice slow circles. And once more in this direction. And now we'll switch directions. Allow your breath to set the pace. Bring your focus and attention to your ankle. Try to go slow if you can. And we'll go once more in this direction. Good. Go ahead and shake it out.